Hello fellow designers, it's Karen of Karen Gwyn Customs, and today I'm giving you guys a pattern drafting tutorial on how to make a pattern for the top portion of this skirt based on custom measurements. Stay tuned. I'm getting ready to draft the skirt portion of this dress that I'm doing for prom. I did a tutorial already for the rosette train, so this is a follow-up to that video, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to draft a non-stretch skirt with darts. The template I'm going to be using is my garment plan worksheet, which is available as a package deal in my fashion designer planner on my Etsy shop, etsy.com/shop/Karen Gwyn Customs. I'm just going to begin by filling out the top portion, garment name, prom dress. And this is her contract that she signed during her consultation that has her sketch and measurements. So I'm just going to be moving that information over to here. Her height is 5'2", bra size 36C, bust 34.5, under bust 28.5, bust front 19, shoulder to under bust front and side is 13.5 and 12. Shoulder to bust apex front and side 11.5 and 6. Above bust we're not using because it's not a strapless dress. Shoulder to waist we have 14. Her waist is 27 inches. Hip we have 35.5. Hip back, which is just the her butt, is 20 inches. Her thigh, where the flare is going to begin, that circumference is 27 inches, which is the same size as her waist. But remember, in my rosette train video, I gave her an inch for walking ease. So I'm just going to change that to 28 because that's how big we're going to make that area. Flare to floor, the length of that is 23 inches. Waist to hip is 7 inches. Hip to floor is 33.5. Armhole depth, I did not measure, but that's something new that I'm measuring, so I can, it will help with drafting the pattern when you're figuring out how deep to make the person's armhole. Her arm length is 22 inches. Her bicep is 10.5 inches. Her wrist is 6 inches. Back width is 13. Cleavage depth is going down to waist level. And her train length, we already did. That was 50 inches, and there is no skirt split, so I crossed that out. Just to show y'all what the sketching section looks like, if you can see, there's two very faint croquis here, the front and the back. So you just pretty much use that as a guide. Kind of outline the body. Use that as a guide when you're doing your own sketches, and eventually it'll help you just learn how to draw people on your own, but it's very helpful if you're not that good with drawing the human body. So here's our rosette train that we already did. Remember, her cleavage is going all the way down to waist depth. She's going to have beaded lace covering the front, and I'm putting cups and boning as well. And then this area here is her glitter mesh, and then the skirt is going to be spandex covered with glitter mesh as well. So that's the front of her dress. Now, this section for pattern pieces is what I use to plan out how my pattern is going to be shaped, and it really helps you brainstorm if you're not sure where to start. So the first thing that you do is you draw a straight line vertically to represent the centerfold of your front pattern piece. And we're going to start off by doing some math. So you're going to take your hip measurement, which is 35.5, and you will subtract the hip back, because we're working on the skirt front. So we're trying to figure out how wide the hip front is. So we know her hip back is 20 inches. That means hip front will be 15.5 inches. And then you divide that by 2 to get half of that as a pattern piece. So we know her hip will be 7.75 inches. For her waist is 27 inches, so when you divide that by 4, you get 6.75 inches for the waist. And then you figure out the hip depth from waist to hip. We know that it is 7 inches because we measured it. So that's how long that is. And then to get the length from your hip to your flare, you're going to do hip to floor, which is 33.5. Then subtract flare to floor, which is 23, because we're trying to get the distance between the hip to the flare. So that gives us 10.5 inches. So this area here from hip down to flare is 10.5 inches. Down here, I'm going to leave this measurement blank because depending on the ratio or like how big the person's butt is, that's going to kind of help determine how wide this should be in the front versus the back. Now, moving on to draft the back pattern piece. Going to draw a straight line, just like you did for the front. Your waist, we're not going to put 6.75. The waist is going to have darts, so it will be wider based on how wide the hip back is. So we know her hip back is 20 inches. So on the pattern piece, her hip back will be 10 inches wide. The flare, I like to do no more than 2 inches less wide than the hip. You might have to tweak this a little, but for now we're going to mark this at 8 inches. And remember, we're trying to get to a 28-inch flare opening. So if this is 8 inches, that means the back flare is going to take up 16 inches at the bottom of the skirt. And that leaves 12 inches for the front of the skirt where the flare is. So that means this will be 6 inches wide. Now, the next thing you do, you have to determine how wide the waist is going to be. So you're going to subtract the waist from the hip on the front piece because you want to have the same difference between waist and hip on the back. So I'm going to do 7.75 minus 6.75. And that gives me 1 inch. So that tells me that my waist on the back should be 9 inches. And then you're going to have a dart to make it match the 6.75 inches in the front, on the front waist. So you're going to do 9 minus 6.75 to tell you how wide your dart is. And that gives you a dart width of 2.25 inches wide. And then the depth, she measures a small. I have a chart that I keep on my calendar, and it says that a size small, she's really more of an extra small, but it says that a small should be 4 inches deep. It says small 4 inches, medium 5 inches, large 6 inches, extra large 7 inches. So that's kind of the guide that I usually use for my darts. So now, and then it's the same distance from waist to hip is 7 inches. Hip to flare is 10.5 inches. So now we have both of our pattern pieces drafted for the skirt. So I'm going to show you guys how I draw it full size. But that is how you use the garment plan to plan out many versions of your pattern. Now, this is also helpful if you are planning on how much fabric to buy. Like I already bought my fabric, but if you want to make sure you're not buying too much or too little fabric, having this little diagram here will really help you know how much you need to order or purchase. So I'm now drawing out the pattern for my skirt pieces onto some easel paper that I purchased from Michaels. So I'm going to draw my front piece first. So I know that my front piece has a distance of 7 inches from waist to hip and then 10.5 inches from hip to flare. So that's going to give me a length of 17.5 inches. So I'm just going to start here and then count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.5. And then her waist is 6.75 inches out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.75 is over there. And And then count down 7 inches to get to her hip level. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's hip level. Her hip is supposed to be 7.75 inches out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.75. And then you just draw a nice curve from waist to hip. This is the 0.5 here. So counting here to the bottom of the skirt, you do 10.5 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10.5. And this is supposed to be 8 inches, no, actually 6 inches out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then you just draw another nice curve. And then you, that's it. So that's it for the front skirt piece. And you also want to add a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Mark your direction. So that's where my fold is going to be. And I'm just roughly sketching out my estimate of what a 1/2 inch seam allowance looks like. Okay, so there is our front skirt pattern piece. And I'm going to move this down so I can sketch out the back. So again, we're counting a length of 17.5 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17.5. This is the back piece. So remember, the waist is 9 inches wide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then the hip is 7 inches below that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the hip is 10 inches out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you just draw a nice line. And then down to the bottom, it's supposed to be 8 inches out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you draw another curve. Now, if you remember, I was talking about how the proportions of the person's butt would affect how wide this bottom piece needs to be, where the bottom of the skirt is. If you feel like this curve is too drastic and it's going to make your hip look weird, then you can always make this wider and then make the front pattern piece less wide to make up for the difference. Also, remember, we have a 2.25 inch dart. So I'm going to draw a center line for the dart at 4.5 inches because the waist is 9 inches. So half of that is 4.5. 1, 2, 3, 4.5. And then with the dart being 2.25 inches on each side, I want it to be 1 1/8 inches wide. So that's 1, and then 1/8 is pretty small. And I'll just measure that with my measuring tape to make sure I kind of have it correctly. 2.25. Make it a little bit wider. And then remember, I wanted to do a 4-inch depth. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you just basically draw a triangle of where you want your dart to be. That's on. Actually, the back I do not cut on the fold because I add a seam allowance for the zipper. Some people don't add seam allowance. I still haven't quite figured out what my preference is, so that's really up to you. because the zipper really does not take up that much space to really require it. But with a non-stretch, you can never be too safe. So I don't think it hurts to have it. Cut 2. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut these out, and then I'm going to cut it out on my fabric. Now I am getting ready to sew the darts into place on the skirt back pieces. So what you do is you can use your pattern for a guide on where to pin. So I can see the edges of the dart on my pattern are here. Actually, I will move that over a little bit. So it's here and there. And then remember, it ends 4 inches down, but you can kind of use your finger for a guide on that. So that's where the end of my dart will be. Then I like to mark both at the same time. So here's the other piece. And then once you have used those pins to guide yourself, sorry, I forgot the light. Once you have used those pins to mark where the darts will be, you just fold it over and then you pin through both layers from the top of the dart to the bottom. So now I have both darts pinned, and I'm going to go ahead and sew them down with a straight stitch. Actually, I prefer to use zigzag, and I don't know why. I don't know if that's proper or not. I'm self-taught, so I make a lot of stuff up myself, but I just prefer zigzag. I just do. I don't know. And then once you get to the bottom of the dart, you want to kind of straighten the fabric out. So you're sewing at the very edge. Instead of just ending like that, you want to end like this. And that's not even like as perfect as I would usually like for it to be. But once the person tries it on, you can kind of see if you need to make adjustments, if you need to smooth it out at all. So here's the other one. So that one actually looks a little bit better. And then now I'm going to sew the back pieces to the front piece. So, and then I'm going to try to pin it on the mannequin so you guys can kind of see how it came out. So here is the back of the skirt, and you can see that the darts are here and here, and I think it looks pretty good. It fits pretty good. The mannequin is pretty similar in size to the client. I don't know if I can serge this glitter mesh fabric. I hope that I can put it through my serger, but if I can't, I will determine how to finish off the inside after I meet with the client and see how it actually fits on her. And if you guys remember my rosette tutorial, I'm just going to pin the rosette onto the bottom of this.